my physical body, while I was on the other side, was literally going through hell. My brain was swelling very rapidly. My temperature was going up,
Mhm.
which happens when you are going close to death. And I then had a grand mal seizure due to the brain swelling. All of that I'm sure would have been scary, but I was me, the me that is this was not there at all. I didn't have to
Exactly, the body.
experience
Mm.
any of the pain of my body. I was completely separate from my body.
Mm.
And I could look at it and go, oh yeah, like that looks kind of crappy.
Hello, world! Happy, happy, happy to be here together with you because today it will be an English. Hello,
Hello.
Amber. How are you?
Hi. Good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming and for your time. If you don't mind, I would love that you just present yourself because who's going to do it better than yourself? So
Perfect.
that you say to the audience who you are and yeah,
Perfect. So
yeah.
my name's Amber. Professionally, I'm known as the West Coast Medium because even before the stroke, I was born being able to see and talk to dead people. Um, I didn't accept my gifts until I was 35, I think. I was not interested in them. I technically kind of hated it. I did not want to know the things I knew because when I was really young, I knew that a lot of the adults didn't see the people that I saw, but I didn't fully understand it. But I also knew a lot of things that other people didn't know. And usually it was very stressful things. So I just wasn't interested. But when I was around 35, I accepted my gifts. And within a few months, I went from working in mental health and addictions with a social work background to being a full-time psychic medium. So I'm a medium, which means I can connect with people who have crossed over. I'm a psychic, or I call it spiritually intuitive. So spirit can make me see, feel, hear, and sense things other people can't. And I'm an empath, but times a million. So I can feel everyone's feelings in everywhere, but I try to set boundaries. So I'm not invading people's personal thoughts and feelings. I'm also a medical intuitive and a healer and an animal communicator. And so I was all those things before I had the stroke. Um, and people have said to me since, like, what kind of psychic doesn't know that they're going to have a stroke? Like,
Yeah, yeah, they
can't you
could
see
ask
the
that.
future? And the fact was that my soul knew. So it was before Christmas, and I started making like frozen meals, and I couldn't figure out why I was making all these meals when Christmas was coming up, and I needed my freezer for like the turkey and ham and all of that. And I just kept cooking and cooking. And my husband is like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just feel like I need to do this."
Yeah.
And it turned out that I made 6 weeks of dinners for my family. And
Wow.
so, when I was in the ICU and when I was recovering, my family had my home cooking. And it was nice because it took me a long time to be able to cook again. So they enjoyed it. But that's me in a nutshell. And then in 2021, yeah, I had a massive stroke. And I went to the other side and experienced an NDE, and I got to make the choice whether or not I wanted to come back. Yeah, and I chose to come back.
And you chose to come back. Oh, that's fantastic. That's really interesting what you're saying. That all these meals that you started to do and to make for your family. Wow.
Yeah,
So
even though
already
yeah,
they, yeah.
I had no idea that
Mm-hmm.
because I couldn't prevent the stroke, there was nothing I could do to make it not happen. And so I have a boundary with the other side that if I can't change it or fix it, I don't want to know it. So, like things like natural disasters or people I love getting sick, if I can't help or stop it, I don't want to know. Otherwise, I would just be living in fear all the time, wondering, oh God, when is it going to happen? When's that going to happen? And so I couldn't prevent the stroke, but I prepared for it in my own way.
Yeah, in your own way, because they guided you doing things automatically. But that is really interesting what you say. So, wow. So this is like a commitment that you make, and like with them that you say, if I can't help, I don't want to know. I think this is really intelligent. I think this is really intelligent of you to do that. So, so if it needs to happen anyway, just let it happen. No?
Yeah. And people, like, again, I've been a psychic medium for a long time, and I've done live videos and stuff since 2017. And people ask me all the time, what about this like huge thing that's going on in the world, or that huge thing, like different things like that. And I don't want to ask, I don't want to know. Like, why do I have the responsibility of knowing if there's going to be a massive earthquake or forest fires or whatever? You know, I don't want to know, because once I know, I can't unknow. And then I'm panicking about it, right? So just because humans feel like they want to know, I do not.
Wow. Yeah, that's really, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic that you did that. Yeah. So anyway, you said that you had this already as a child, because I wanted to start with this question, no? I wanted to start with your childhood. So you were sensitive and empathic already. Did you? So you perceived, you saw them, you hear them, you heard them. Yeah.
Yeah.
All the people who are already crossed over, who were in between and wanted some help to cross over, because.
So I could see and hear them. I didn't know how to talk to them. So like I couldn't have a back and forth conversation when I was young. I could just feel that they were there, and I wasn't totally sure why. I didn't learn how to like actually have a back and forth conversation until I accepted my gifts much later in life. I think again, it was a protection thing, because that's a huge responsibility for a kid to feel like I have to help all of these people that nobody else could see. So they were always there, but I couldn't have a back and forth conversation with them until I accepted my gifts.
Yeah, okay. Can you walk us through the moments leading up to your stroke? What was happening both physically and emotionally during that time?
So the day before, it was Christmas, like 2 or 3 days before Christmas. And so we made gingerbread houses. And then we were watching a Christmas movie as a family. And all of a sudden, I got like the worst headache of my life. So bad that I said, you know, I really want to watch the movie, but I can't. I have to go to bed. I don't really remember a lot after that, but according to my husband, and I can see my phone, like an hour later after I'd gone to bed, I texted him and I said, you know, this headache's really, really bad. Can you bring me some Tylenol and Advil? And he brought it, and I took it. And then I thought I fell asleep, but I went into unconsciousness. And the headache was my carotid dissecting. And so I had the stroke when I was fully asleep. So I had no awareness. Strokes aren't painful. They don't wake you up because they don't hurt. And so I woke up around 4:30 in the morning, and I thought I was dreaming. And I tried to get out of bed, but my right side was completely paralyzed. And so, long story short, there's a whole bunch in between of like the medical side of it. I banged on the wall because nobody was in my room. My husband had fallen on the couch, fell asleep on the couch. And he came in, and he has like high up first aid training. So we knew the things that you check for a stroke. And at first, again, he thought I was dreaming too, but he did the stroke is called Be Fast. And he did it and said, like, you're having a freaking stroke, called the ambulance, and a whole bunch more stuff happened. I ended up in the hospital in my town and they gave me a drug called TPA. It's to break up clots, and it's a dangerous drug, but if it works, it really works, and it can reverse the signs of stroke if you get treated within that magical, I think it's
time.
3 to 4 hours or something.
Okay, okay.
Unfortunately for me, it was well past that time. The upside is I had a carotid dissection on the left side, and I had a completed stroke, which means that whole artery died. It was done. And it caused a secondary stroke in my frontal lobe. And that medication stopped that stroke from going any further. But the first one was done. And because it didn't work, they needed to send me to a bigger hospital for brain surgery. And so I was life flighted like a helicopter. And in the helicopter is when I went to the other side.
That in that period, let's say, in that period when you were in the helicopter, once that you were in the hospital, then you were back already.
Yeah. So it's hard for me to like put
just in
time on it. Yeah. So like in the helicopter, the sun hit my face, and my husband tried to block the sun because it was super bright. And that brightness then went from the sun hitting my face to the other side. Like I literally closed my eyes and opened them on the other side. And I could see my physical body in the helicopter. I wasn't dead. Like I wasn't physically dead. I was clinging to life. And I didn't fully go back into my body. So like that was probably halfway through a 10 or 15 minute helicopter ride. It was not a long ride. Okay. And we got to the other hospital, landed. I went in, and a whole bunch of stuff was being decided. And then I had a grand mal seizure. I went back into my body when the seizure was done. So I was out of my body for like a long time, human time.
Yeah, because time and space doesn't exist, of course.
No. So it felt like I was on the other side for like 10 years, 100 years. There was no time to it.
Exactly. So 10 years and there, 100 years there, but here it was like
few minutes.
Exactly. Yeah. What was your experience during the stroke itself? Were you aware of what it was happening, or did it felt it like surreal? Not real.
I was for sure confused. Like I was very brain damaged. And I kind of knew what was going on. I knew there was something really wrong because I was paralyzed. The right side of my body, the neurologist said it didn't even have a shadow of movement. Like no, I had no, like they poke you with pins and stuff. I could not feel anything. And so I know, like my family said, I seemed really scared because I kept touching myself and trying to figure out what's wrong. And I would pick up this arm and drop it. I also, though, when they gave me the TPA, they gave me Benadryl, which is like a allergy thing, because a lot of people are allergic to the TPA. And I went into anaphylactic shock. And so I was very uncomfortable and covered in hives, but I was just very confused and I couldn't talk. So I lost all verbal skills. I could say my sister's name, which is Michelle, and I could say the F word, which is great. And so I thought I was talking, but apparently when I thought I was talking, I was saying Michelle, but I was also just making weird noises. And I had no idea I wasn't talking because my brain wasn't there. So that from the moment when I woke up until I went unconscious in the helicopter, it was the scariest and most horrible time I've ever experienced. It was hard for my family. It was hard for me to see them coming to say goodbye. but it was so extremely traumatic and awful. After I recovered a bit, I actually went to therapy for like 6 months to get over. I kept playing, like, because I fell out of bed and I was on the floor and I couldn't move and I couldn't get to the door. All of that was very scary.
Yeah, I'm very disagreeing. You see, I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're not there, you don't understand these things, you know?
Yeah.
You really need to live them to understand what it
Yeah.
is to, yeah. Can you recall, let's say, any specific sensations or perceptions during the time that you were clinical dead? Were they like any vivid images, sounds, or feelings that stood out of you?
So I was not technically dead. My body was still alive, but when I went to the other side, I woke up in a beautiful garden. It was the most amazing place I've ever been. And the entire time I was there, I could see my family still. I could see what they were doing. I could see their devastation. I could hear them bargaining with God. And they're not even religious, but bargaining like, if you let her live, I will, do whatever you want, that kind of stuff. I could see my kids. I could see my husband. But when you're on the other side, it's not that it doesn't matter. It's just that you understand why it's all happening. So it's not sad or scary. But
you just understand. You
you just
understand
know.
for what it is.
Yeah. And there's no why. Why
Exactly.
doesn't exist. You have all the answers. So I was able to focus totally on the choice I needed to make and not worry that my family wasn't going to be there for me.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, you just understand everything. Did you feel like a sense of separation from the physical body during your near-death experience? If
For
so,
sure.
yeah, how did that impact on your understanding of the body-mind connection?
So my physical body, while I was on the other side, was literally going through hell. My brain was swelling very rapidly. My temperature was going up, which happens when you are going close to death. And I then had a grand mal seizure due to the brain swelling. All of that I'm sure would have been scary, but I was me, the me that is this was not there at all. I didn't have to experience any of the pain of my body. I was completely separate from my body. And I could look at it and go, oh yeah, like that looks kind of crappy. But I didn't have to feel it at all. I didn't have to experience it at all. My soul, my like mind, body, soul connection was, I don't want to say severed, but I was fully on the other side. So the me that what like experienced the stroke and all of the confusion and the pain wasn't there anymore. And I'm glad because it would have been awful.
It would have been, devastating.
So
also.
I just got to be on the other side. And on the other side, like my husband was there, my kids were there, like their higher selves. Some of my crossed over family members and some of my pets, my guides, and then all of my other lives were standing to the side.
Everything was there? Everything was
they were
there?
all
So also the people who are dead, your pets, the people who are still alive in this physical life, they were
but
all
not
there.
All of them, just my husband and kids, my dogs, my mother-in-law and my grandma and my nana were there, and then my guides, and then my all my other lives. Again, though, there's no why, and you don't have to talk necessarily, so it's all telepathic. So I didn't run up and hug anyone. I just knew they were there to support me, and that I had like a purpose and I needed to make a decision.
Exactly. Wow, this is amazing. Did you have like any profound or spiritual experiences during the time that you were clinical dads?
Yes,
So if
be,
you could
because
share some details, yeah.
well, because I was sort of on the other side, I got to actually talk to my guides, and I got to feel the energy of whatever you want to call it, source, God. It emanated from every blade of grass, every molecule of water, every flower, everything like shone with this golden rainbow light. And so, like, just standing with my feet in the grass, because I didn't have shoes on, was like a profound spiritual experience because I could feel the collective consciousness and I could tune into the support I get or we get from the other side. And it was so, I don't know, helpful, I guess, that they sort of walked me through what my life would be like if I chose to come back. And then they walked me through what my family's life would be like if I chose to stay on the other side. And there was no judgment. There was no, you should do this or you should do that. It was just them saying, no matter what, your soul is fine. No matter what, your family and everyone you who knows you will have planned this as well and be okay with whatever choice you make. And they did tell me like the good and the bad. They said if I chose to stay on the other side, my husband would have a hard time and probably would become an alcoholic and marry a much younger girl, which, you know, to each their own. But that, you know, they would be fine and he would take care of the kids really well. And then they said, you know, if I chose to come back, it would be, especially the first 18 months, would be the hardest time of this physical life. And I would regret my choice and would want to leave and not be here anymore. But they said after that, the most amazing things will happen. I would write books and I would public speak and I would help the collective consciousness so much. So there was, I couldn't even list on 10 fingers the amount of sort of spiritual experiences or knowledge that I gained through the NDE, but it was a lot.
That's really incredible. Yeah. So they let you choose, but they was it like this? Was it really like the first 18 months was really horrible,
Yeah,
difficult?
it was horrible, really, really bad, because I was on a very high dose of a seizure medication. And it made me feel so awful. But I also, like, I woke up and I was still paralyzed. I was nonverbal. I couldn't eat or drink or walk or go to the bathroom, or talk or nothing. I had to relearn everything. I had to relearn every skill I had lost, and it took a long time. I was in the hospital in the ICU for 2 weeks, and then they let me come home, but I was technically like an outpatient rehab patient. And so I did 10 weeks of rehab, like super hard rehab at the hospital. And that's all they cover. And then I had to pay for more rehab because I was still struggling. And, you know, I still have a lot of deficits. But I'm so much better than I was. I still can't feel the right side of my body at all. I have no sensory. I can move it, not as good as this side, but I can't feel it. I can't feel anything. I struggle to eat. I choke. I, you know, I have a lot of deficits, but there's so many good things that have come from it.
I'm sure. And you know,
Yeah.
because they told you, you know that everything will work out so fantastically. You know that. We
Yeah.
had a little in between, but now we
Yeah.
just go on. Yeah, okay. You said there were encounters with deceased loved ones and your spiritual beings, your guides and everything. Were there also other entities during your near-death experience?
There was, I didn't necessarily talk to them. So there was an entire group of people sort of up a bit in the field, and they were all my other lives. So there were people, all genders, all races, all time dimensions. So people from the 1800s, the 2400s, present day. And I knew that they were all parts of my higher soul. But I didn't go and talk to them. So the people that I talked to the most and spent the most time with were my guides. And then I spent a lot of time, I don't know, like wasting time. So like I not wasting time because it doesn't exist, but like with my feet in the grass. And then I would walk, there was like a little pond and then a creek that went sort of underground to a gazebo. And then there was a kind of the creek with rocks in it, and I would stand in the creek with my feet on the rocks because each like molecule of water carried the most love I have ever felt. And so
Oh,
I kind of went back and forth and talked to my guides, and then would go into the creek, would walk over to the grass, that kind of stuff.
so you did all these things while you were on the other
Yeah.
side. Weren't
Yeah.
you interested in your other lives to know, to feel, to could you
No,
feel them
because
all simultaneously?
yeah, and it's not that I wasn't interested, it's that I didn't have questions, because the second you're over there, you know
No,
everything. You know the
you just
reason for
understand.
everything. And everything is
Wow.
telepathic. So like their thoughts were my thoughts. You know, I didn't have to go and talk to them. Everything just made sense. So it wasn't like, oh my
Mm.
gosh, there's my grandma who I haven't seen in years since she died. I'm going to go talk to her. I didn't have to, because I just knew everything and she knew everything. And you didn't have to have a conversation about it. So it was just like peaceful, quiet balance of everyone understanding everyone else.
It's so amazing, you know, for for an experience here in the in the third dimension, in this vehicle that we have. It's very difficult to understand these things, you know.
Yeah,
It's like you say. It's like you say. You just understand everything. It's
yeah,
so amazing. You feel, and you don't have any questions.
yeah,
Everything is what it is. I always used to
yeah,
say it in my Spanish interviews, and that everything is just what it is. You know, there's no
yeah.
questions, there's no doubt, there's no sufferance, there's no. But I'm just like thinking, if you saw, because you had good lives and bad lives, you know, lives of sufferance and lives were much more easier, loving. You couldn't separate them, or were they just one, all one?
they were all, no, they were all just standing there. They weren't at, like, they weren't my concern at all. Like I wasn't,
Okay.
that's not why I was there. And so they were just there in support and to help me understand that, you know, one life is just one small piece of a much bigger existence. So
Mm.
I didn't, there was nothing I wanted to hear from them or anything like that. So they were just there. And
Supportive.
I support. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. How did those interactions influence your beliefs about afterlife or spiritual realms?
I think it just confirmed a lot of what I already believed and made it easier to talk about, because it's so hard to explain to humans when they ask questions like time and space doesn't exist there, or, you
Yeah.
know, like there always is this bigger purpose. And me going there and feeling that and having that like concrete faith now that this is just one piece of existence, it made what I do now a lot easier, I think. It definitely like made me have more faith in myself and more faith in my guides, because they really were there not to tell me what to do at all, but to support me while I got to choose what to do.
Yes.
So it made everything I already suspected become a belief. Like I just know now, it confirmed so
Confirms, yeah.
much of what I've been talking about for so many years. The
Yeah.
stroke happened in 2021. I accepted my gifts in 2015. So for 6 years, I was saying all these things, but who's going to believe you, right? Like you could just be a crazy woo-woo hippie that like has no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so going there and getting to actually experience just a little bit of what it's like. And I wasn't fully on the other side.
Yeah.
Once you fully are on the other side or in heaven, you can't come back. I was like in like a waiting area.
Yeah. Half.
Yeah. Like
Half,
an in
yeah.
between. Yeah.
An in between. Yeah.
Yeah.
Between 15 and 21, so these 6 years, you were already a medium and you were doing all
Yeah.
these things. What do you think then that your stroke put on top of it? Because already you were doing what you were doing. Already you were working as a medium. Already you were doing like your mission of life.
Yeah.
Why did you had to go through that stroke to what do you do now more that you didn't do before? Or
So
what do
I
you
woke up.
understand more? Yeah.
Yeah. My gifts were insane when I woke up. So I didn't realize it right at first. Again, I was in the ICU, the neuro ICU. I was in the regular ICU, I think, for 24 hours or 48. And then I went to the neuro ICU. And so by then it was, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. And people, nurses and stuff, obviously kept coming into the room because I was still not doing well. And I was just like, what is wrong with them? Like they keep coming into the room and being like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for her. And they were like talking like I wasn't in the room. And I was like, why are they doing this? And like constantly it was, oh, she has kids and I can't even imagine. It's Christmas Day. How horrible. And I'm like, what the heck? Like my eyes are open. Can't you see that you
Yeah.
shouldn't be talking? And it took a couple of days for me to realize they weren't talking. They were thinking it. So they
Exactly.
were thinking, oh my gosh, I feel so bad. It's Christmas Day and she's, in
Poor
bed,
thing. Yeah.
paralyzed. And so, before I was very empathic, but I couldn't necessarily read people's thoughts. I couldn't hear what they were thinking. And when I woke up, it's all I could,
You could
I
hear
couldn't stop.
everything.
And so I actually ended up, once I could talk a little bit, I had to tell my family and my kids, if you are going to think sad, negative thoughts like, oh my God, is she never going to get out of the hospital? Or if she's whatever, you have to go into another room because it's deafening and it's all I hear. Because I couldn't tell the nurses. I also couldn't communicate very well. And that I did learn to control a bit. But when I do readings now, it's like times a million. It's so much easier for me. I
Okay.
don't have as much stamina, like I get more tired and I can't work as often. And I have like a shelf life around an hour and a half to 2 hours. As soon as I hit that, I can't do any, like I shut down. But so many things are just so much easier because there's no separation, because I've gone there and I know now what telepathy feels like and that it's not scary. I just let them do it. So their thoughts become my words and there's no in between or confusion.
If you have like information or you see the dads next to you and they want to give you some information and everything, so it doesn't scare you, while before it really scared you.
It didn't scare me necessarily. It was more, I didn't like the telepathy. Like I liked to listen and then repeat, because then I could choose. And now I don't have to listen. They think it and I say it. Whereas before I was like, absolutely, like I need to decide if I want to say it. And now I just have faith that they're going to say the exact right thing. And that's it. So yeah, my gifts are times a million and I'm grateful for it. It took a long time to reset all my boundaries once I came back.
The stroke, that everything is one. That's why
Yeah.
everything becomes all together and it's smooth. Everything. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What did your guides told you when you were there? When, yeah.
Again, kind of everything. And they showed me.
Yeah, exactly. Or what
different,
you?
different versions of the future. So free will exists for everybody on the planet. We can change our path, manipulate it, make different choices. And so they just showed me everything I needed to know to make the decision to come back or not. And some of it I don't remember. You know, I know that they showed it to me, but some of it isn't pertinent and I don't need to know. And it's nice to have some surprises. But they were very sort of upfront about how hard it would be, but also how amazing it would be.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And then they also showed me, because my big thing is if my kids were going to suffer and I was going to be away from them, then I was going to go back, like absolutely not. And so that's why my kids were on the other side with me, because I needed to know that they would be okay with whatever I chose.
Okay. It's so fantastic that they really, without judgment and without any condition, they let you choose your way. But in one or another way, they say how difficult it is, but then on the other way, they say to you how wonderful it is. So it gives you so much love and so much comfortance, let's say,
Yeah.
that you choose anyway for this, because they know what you're going to choose eventually.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. Well, and the second, so like it took me a long time to make the decision. As soon as I made the decision, I wasn't in the garden anymore. And I wasn't ready to go back to my body. And so I left the garden and have you heard of the NDEs where like people get surgery and they like float up above in a light and they can see their body, but they're not in it? I was in this kind of light-filled waiting room. And I got to it right when the seizure started. And I stayed in that sort of light-filled waiting room until the seizure was over. And then I closed my eyes and then I was in my body fully and unconscious. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Really amazing. I love to listen to all these stories. How does it feel to be on the other side?
So it literally is like the most comforting home. Wherever you think of as home, times it by a million, and everything makes sense and everything emanates with love. Like there's not one negative feeling or thought or anything. Everything makes sense, is balanced, joyful, and just feels like home. As soon as you're there, that amnesia that we are born with goes away. And so not only can you see and feel and understand everything makes sense. Every choice you ever made, every relationship, all of that. And again, I was like in like a waiting room, not even fully on the other side. So I wasn't able to see all of my parallel lives living here on Earth. And it's still, everything made so much sense. It just feels like home. It's very hard to leave. And in that first 6 months when it was so hard, more times than I could count, I would pray when I went to bed to have another stroke and go back, because it was so hard being human. And it's so frustrating. You know, brain injuries are, unless you've had one, it's hard to explain, but it's like I was a child.
Mm,
And, you know, I had to learn everything again. And it was so frustrating. And people pity you. And I hate
mm,
like the head tilt of pity. "Oh, I'm so sorry
yeah.
that you're going." It just was so frustrating. And I felt so guilty that
Mm.
I, in
You
my
needed
mind,
everybody,
I
yeah.
like, yeah, well, and I like destroyed my kids' childhoods. And now I don't think that at all. But when it's in the beginning and everything's so hard and life is so difficult, you feel so guilty.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I believe that, yeah.
Yeah.
I do understand that, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, have you noticed some changes in your personality, in your
Yeah.
outlook or priorities since your recovery?
100%. I am so much more relaxed. I was very type A before my whole life to stop seeing like dead people and knowing things. I had to be very like anal and do things a certain way. And I'm so my kids say like the stroke was a gift. It was character
Mm.
development because we're so much closer. I don't take anything for granted. I see beauty in things I wouldn't even have
Oh,
noticed before. And I'm just so grateful for every moment, every day that I get to exist here. And it brought my family, like my kids and my husband and myself, so much closer, you
mm,
know, and we now enjoy life because I can't rush through anymore because I'm exhausted a lot of the time. So
mm.
we sit around and we chat and we walk and we eat our meals together and we make sure we pay attention to each other and we talk so much. We have talked the trauma out of the stroke because we haven't buried
Exactly.
it.
Mm.
We're all so much better for the stroke, and I wouldn't change well, maybe a few moments of it.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
really crappy ones, but yeah.
yeah. But that's why I called it magical, because on the end of the day, when people have like these experiences, then eventually it's always magical. It's always good for something, yeah,
Yeah.
because themselves, they always, even if they are between this moment from do I stay, do I go,
Yeah.
even if it feels home and so magical, they, in one or another way, they do come back because they still have their mission and their life going to be so much better. So it's
Yeah.
really, how many children do you have?
2.
Ah, two. Okay.
Yeah.
And how old are
Yeah.
they
And
now?
when they're now, my son will be 15
Mm,
this week, and my daughter will be 17 in June. So when I had the stroke, they were 12 and 14.
12 and 14. Okay.
Yeah.
Good ages. Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic to just grow through all
Yeah.
these experiences together with the whole family. This is wow, this is
Yeah.
fantastic. Um, how um, how has your experience with your stroke influenced your relationships with your friends, your colleagues?
I think, I don't know. I want to say in a good way, but I have had to set a lot of boundaries and I don't apologize for saying no anymore. Again, I have a brain injury. So during the day, I'm really good. By nighttime, I have aphasia, which is a speech deficit. And so I can't talk in the evenings and stuff like that. So unfortunately, it is true what they say that, you know, when the stroke happened, the whole world wanted to make sure I was okay, sent me so many messages. And as I was recovering, and I was very brain injured, I sounded a lot different. Nobody talked to me. You know, so many people who were part of my life never talked to me again. And then also so many people who were a part of my life and hung out with me after realized, okay, like this is how she is now, and then never talked to me. So I have a lot less people in my life, but a lot better quality. And then I actually had to go sort of no contact with a couple of people because I needed to take care of myself. The stroke really helped me figure out my priorities. Like I can't take care of everyone. I have to take care of myself first, and then my husband and I, and then my kids. And I think being friends with a very brain injured person can try your patience, because I can go from 0 to 60 in a bad way if I'm tired, or if somebody says something that is hard for me to understand or something like that. And it has gotten a lot better, but I will be brain injured until the day I die. And it's not just a little brain injury. I am missing all of this part of my brain, and I'm missing a big chunk of this part of my brain, and it doesn't come back. It just turns to liquid. It all dies off. So there's certain things I'll never be able to do. And I think it's hard for people. But again, the quality people and the people that are so close to me and understand me are so important. So I have my handful of people, whereas maybe I used to have 10 handfuls, but that handful of people is just enough for me to feel comfortable.
And I think that's the most important, because on the end of the day, what you say, it's not the quantity, it's the quality who's the most important. So it makes like a natural selection. This is what happens. Yeah. And your spirit's always there. I mean, your guide's always there to give you a hand and say, there, yes, there, not. And so fantastic. On the end of the day, you stay with what gives you the most love and the most comfortable to be in your life, no?
Yeah.
Because I wanted to ask you, what is the biggest difference, what you feel, what's the biggest difference between your life before and now? Before the stroke and now?
Like
for you?
Spiritually or like physically?
Physically and spiritually. Let's start with physical.
Well, not being able to feel half of
exactly
my body
is
really hard.
It's quite a lot already.
And not being able to eat properly. The part of my brain that tells me that I'm hungry and thirsty is gone. So I'm never hungry. I don't have hunger cues, and most food is gross to me, and I have a really hard time chewing and swallowing. So I have a hard time keeping weight on my body. Spiritually, I couldn't even pick. Everything makes so much sense. I still definitely don't always listen. You know, my guides will be like, you should do this or that, and you're ready to teach another class, or, you know, do this with that person. And I still, you know, sometimes my human self and my brain injured self takes over and is like, no, I actually don't want to do that. Sorry. But they're so patient and they're so understanding that I am human after all. And sometimes I don't want to do absolutely everything, but everything spiritually is just so much easier and so much more joyful, because I don't have the same questions that most people do. You know, most people that have faith in something sometimes think that maybe it's not real. You know, maybe I am just making this up. Maybe we're just here and then we die and that's it. I have actually seen the other side. So for me, it's not just faith, it's knowing. Like it's not faith in some unknown, it's faith in the known, which I think is a gift in and of itself.
Exactly. Absolutely. Are there misconceptions about stroke and near-death experiences that you would like to address or clarify based on your own experiences?
I think that it only happens to old people. That's just not true. Unfortunately, I had a stroke right during COVID and the vaccines. And so everybody blames the stroke on
the vaccine.
Yeah, which, you know, my dad also had a stroke at 40 and he's 82 now, right? So, but I think everybody thinks stroke happens to old people. And I'm on like Facebook support groups for young stroke survivors. And especially with women, there are so many people who have strokes. So I think people just need to be aware. If you are getting really bad headaches, make sure you check it out. Make sure if your blood pressure is high, or if you take birth control, that you check it out. If you have a history in your family of stroke, don't go to the chiropractor and get your neck adjusted, because that, if you're prone to it, can make your carotid dissect. So I think the myth is that it happens to old people that are going to die anyways. And that's just not true.
That's really interesting what you say. Physically. So these are like the symptoms that you would say you have to look at. The high pressure.
And and sometimes there's nothing.
There's nothing. Exactly. You just have it because I mean, this is your experience. The thing is, it's always the same. We chose to live it, and on the end of the day, we just forget. We just forget. But they say that your soul is like choose all the experiences you're going to live in your life. But then really and truly, the soul never chooses for sufferance. How is that a little bit? It's a bit contrary, Because if you come to your life and you come and you say, okay, I want to experience in my life love, you're going to also experience all the things who are the opposite from love.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't recognize love if you didn't see the opposites, though. You wouldn't know what you're looking at.
Exactly.
And on the other side, they don't see it as suffering. You know, we see good, bad. They don't see that. They see learning. So the things we feel are suffering, they think are just really big lessons, because you learn more when things are hard than when they're super, super easy.
Absolutely.
So the soul does choose all the learning experiences before we come here. Humans put a good or bad label on it. Absolutely. The other side doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what happens because when we talked offline, you said also that old, like you and me, we are like old souls that we can stand much more sufferance than young souls.
Yeah, and young souls.
And why is that?
Really, so it's kind of like an old soul is like somebody going to school to be a doctor. You would never put a 5-year-old in a class with people going to be doctors. They would have no idea what's going on and they would fail. If you put a young soul in a very difficult life, they will just go back to the other side because it would just be too hard. So we plan lives in kind of accordance with our soul age or our vibration.
So the older your soul and the more experiences and lives you lived, really, the more you can stand, the more you can...
the more lessons you're ready to learn.
The more lessons you learned already, so you know how to solve them. Let's say it like this. No? Wow. Fantastic. We're going to leave, okay, Amber, because we did already quite a long time. Do you have a little message for the people? Because I still have a lot of questions that we didn't come to, because it's so amazing to talk to you. So do you have a little message, or what advice would you give to people who may have experienced similar life-threatening events, let's say?
So I think, honestly, if I could just say one thing to people, it's that no matter what you're going through, how difficult it is, or easy sometimes, you are never alone. Even if as a human you feel very alone, you are never, ever alone. You have a cheering squad on the other side of family and friends and your guides that are always there with you going through these difficult things. And you know, I can speak from firsthand experience. After the stroke,
Exactly.
I felt so alone because I didn't know anybody else who had gone through something like this. So as a human here on this planet, I felt like nobody understood. But I was lucky in the way that I could talk to my guides and I knew they were there. So even if you can't hear them or you don't have faith that they're there, I promise they are. And you always have a team working with you to help you make those choices on this planet to continue to learn lessons.
This is amazing. Thank you so, so much, Amber,
Yes, my pleasure.
for your beautiful message, for all to share with us all your experiences. It was a pleasure. Lots of love, lots of light for everybody, and a lot of, and a beautiful, blessed day for everybody. And
Thank
for you.
you. Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.